how long are they going to continue to distort free markets? And then to add to that, when will the bailouts or the madness of the bailouts end? I think it's all about asset prices, Josh. I think it's just that, and that's why you haven't seen stimulus. I mean, there's a variety of reasons because of what's going on politically and kind of the bottleneck there. But really, at the end of the day, if the market would have continued to crash, or if in the last month or so, or if in the last month the market would have gone down again by, let's say, 20 or 30%, that they would have gone right to the old stimulus once again. That's really the trigger. They understand they have to continue to prop up asset bubbles, or else we're done. The economy's done. If we get a big deleveraging, it's at least a nominal deleveraging or nominal decrease in asset prices. You've just got big problems. So I think that's, when does it end? I don't think it ends until the whole thing collapses as a result of the bailout madness, because there's no free lunch. Right? I was just going back and forth with Brent on this, not really back and forth, but I didn't have much time. So, I was fascinated by the conversation. I think I can't remember who was in there. I think Luke might have been a part of the little Twitter thread or something. And my thing, because we were talking about Japan and how they did a lot of quantitative easing, but yet they didn't experience any type of hyperinflation. And the thing that I always get hung up on with that is, if you can print money without the fear of inflation, then what are we doing? Like, why are we working? Why don't we just write, give everyone a check for $10 million and just kick back, and we've eradicated poverty? Everyone knows that won't work. So, but then you have to reverse engineer it and say, well, why, right? And so then thinking through what happened in Japan with their quantitative easing and what we've done here, what they've done in Europe, and then you have to I think, for me at least, and that's one reason why I like the Austrian School of Economics, because they're always doing thought experiments and taking things to kind of an extreme to understand things in the middle a little bit better. And that's really how I learn. And that's why I always do this stuff on Twitter. And most of my whiteboard videos, as you guys know, I take things kind of to an extreme. And it's to help me and hopefully other people to really think things through more clearly, right? So that's the extreme I like to use. Is well, if we never have to worry about deflation again, then again, why not just give everyone a $10 million check and we're done, right? We've solved poverty. We live in a utopia now. Well, okay, so then the question is, well, okay, that wouldn't work. So why wouldn't it work? Would it work some places better than other places? As an example, they didn't spend the money as quickly, therefore creating the inflation. I would argue that would wildly misallocate resources, which would destroy the economy even further, and that would kind of be the release valve for the free lunch, if you will. But then it comes back to, okay, well, if they've all done quantitative easing, and then that means that quantitative easing probably hasn't increased broad money, or said better, that quantitative easing hasn't increased the amount of deposits in the commercial banking system, or as Snyder always says, bank liabilities. So then you have to say, okay, well, then the quantitative easing really isn't money printing, quote unquote, if that's how we're defining it. And then it takes you down this rabbit hole, right? So my point is, I don't see how they stop the bailouts. You would have to have, and I don't know if you guys saw my interview with Jeff and with Lynn, but that was one of the things that I asked Jeff. I said, can the economy, and I was talking about the United States economy, actually recover, and like a real recovery, not a fake Band-Aid, which is, QE or whatever financial tricks the Fed and the government pull. But can the economy really get healthy again without solving the problem of the Eurodollar system? And he said, no, it can't. So, so then you ask the question, well, how do you solve the Eurodollar system problem? And there's several ways it could happen, but the most likely way is that if it's got to collapse. It's got to collapse to the point where the politicians and Klaus and everyone, they just don't have a choice but to submit and say, okay, this is our biggest problem right now, period. And then figure out a way to fix it, hopefully with a bottoms up type of approach. And so a lot of the people think that Bitcoin will create that type of chain reaction. And it may short term. I don't know long term how that would play out, but I'm actually talking to Raul tomorrow morning. And I hopefully we can get on this topic of a new monetary system. What would that look like? And how would crypto play into that? And is it possible to have a one global decentralized money? Let's call it Bitcoin. And there is no other money. So basically you're going back to what gold was in, let's say, the 1800s or the 1700s. And that was money in and of itself. And, or I guess it kind of still is, but does Bitcoin play that role? And if it does, how does it differ from what just from a 30,000 foot level of what we dealt with and how things worked in the 1700s and the 1800s? And that's one reason why I did that video the other day on full reserve banking, free banking, and how that morphed into the banks being nationalized and us having the Fed and Bretton Woods and the Eurodollar system that we have today. That was all done under a gold standard. So then the question becomes, does Bitcoin solve that?